This is the final teaching on the wise, the fool, and the wicked. We know that the wise is a person who seeks truth. God's told us that there's three types of fools: the simple fool, unreasonable fool, and the stubborn fool. We've also looked at the first type of evil or wicked person, which is the mocker. And they're wicked and evil because of the destruction that's present in their heart. This is the third, or the second and final type of wicked person, the third category. This is what God calls the nabal. It is a fool in every full sense of the word. The nabal, N-A-B-A-L, is the Hebrew word that is translated as fool. In Psalm 14:1 it says, "For the director of music of David, the fool, the nabal, says in his heart, there is no God." Wow. Listen to that. There is no God. That's a pretty extreme place to be. That's evil. That's wicked. They go on to say they are corrupt in their deeds. They are corrupt. Their deeds are vile. There is no one who does good. There's no good that they go about and do. That's the nabal. In fact, Psalm 53:1 says the exact same thing again, a reinforcement, a confirmation. When you're dealing with a nabal, just get out of their way. A nabal is an extreme form of wickedness and evil. It's a person who is corrupt in all their deeds. Get out of the way. Most of the time, the nabals work against God. Psalm 74:18 says, "Remember how the enemy has mocked you, O Lord, how foolish people have reviled your name." In that verse, there's both the mocker and the second one, foolish people, is the nabal. They're often indifferent to the pain, the suffering that they cause. They lack empathy. They lack mercy and compassion. Isaiah 32:6 says, "For the fool, the nabal, speaks folly. His mind is busy with evil. He practices ungodliness and spreads error concerning the Lord. The hungry he leaves empty, and from the thirsty he withholds water." This is serious evil and wickedness. This is the nabal. I think in terms of the Old Testament that God has given us numerous examples of nabalish behavior. When Achan stood against God with Moses, Achan and his entire family was wiped out. He was acting as a nabal. When Amnon slept with his stepsister Tamar, that was nabalish behavior. And then when he was killed by Absalom, again, there was nabalish behavior there. When the tribe of Benjamin did some grievous sin and how they were suffered greatly for it, you will read nabalish behavior. There's actually a man in the Old Testament named Nabal. I can't imagine, it would be like parents naming a young boy named Sue, the old Johnny Cash song. But you have this little baby and you're going to call him fool. Not just fool, but Nabal. I think probably what really happened is this guy was named Fred or Harry or John or Jeremiah. And then as he grew up, he acted in such an evil and wicked way that they changed his name. They said, that guy's not Jeremiah, that guy's Nabal. Why? Because he was acting with evil and sowing it. He was stubborn and hard-headed. This man Nabal had herds and flocks. David's men righteously protected those herds. The custom was that when shearing time came and the time of harvest, that then they would share with those people out there in the fields, righteously, because they had protected the flock, so therefore they had multiplied. They had kept them from the wolves and from thieves coming. So David sends a few men and says, "Hey, can you send us some cakes, some raisin cakes here? Can you send us a little bit of the profits that you've made so that, we can sustain ourselves out here?" This guy says, "Who is this man, David? Who's this flea, Jesse, son of Jesse, running around?" He just was a total stubborn jerk. What does David do? He responds unrighteously, gets basically drawn into it, and comes against him with 500 fighting men, valiant men. That's like an army going against a flea. Fortunately, that David's actions were interrupted. but you can see the behavior of a nabal. It's so clearly spelled out. How do you interrupt the nabalish behavior? There's bad news here. You don't. It's up to God. This is a behavior that is so extreme that you just need to stay away from the person. Back out. I believe the Apostle Paul, when he was Saul, breathing out threatenings, dragging men and women that were Christians out of their homes, killing them and persecuting them. Intentions were right, but he was acting as a nabal. It took the Lord Jesus Christ to interrupt Paul, to knock him off that horse. Just because someone is doing things and thinking they're doing it in the name of heaven or in the name of God or Jesus doesn't mean they are. Righteous intent is not what's present here. When you're dealing with a nabal, they're actually thwarting the plans and purposes of God. Let me give you some characteristics of the nabal. They are the most extreme form of wicked and evil. They've gone past mere words as the mocker, and they're entered into serious actions. They are considered wicked, impious, and vile. There's no amount of warning or correction or reproof or intellectual reasoning that's going to affect them. Their mouths are filled with words sponsored by evil. They're committed to evil. They can make bold statements against God. There is no God. You know, they're vain, self-centered. They have attitudes and philosophies that are actually contrary to God. And their conduct reveals planned, calculated cunning. This is a state of evil that we need to stay away from. So in conclusion, as we've looked at this, we have the wise, the fool, and the wicked. The point of this is, let's identify the foolish behavior in our lives. Let's make sure that if we do unreasonable things, we interrupt it there. That when we see that we're being stubborn, we just are honest and open about it and truthful, seeking out counsel and godly help so that we can be wise, so we don't slide into the category of the wicked with the mocker or the nabal. If we do that, I believe we will be pursuing a righteous path to be disciples of Christ. We will be increasing in our discernment. We will be training ourselves to recognize good from evil. We will be, what God says, wise.